The notification vibrated against my wrist at exactly 9:47 p.m. I glanced down at my phone, expecting a text from work, maybe a late email about tomorrow and #39's presentation. Instead, what I saw made the entire world tilt sideways. My husband and #39 smartwatch location. We and #39 desynced them years ago, back when we were newlyweds who found it romantic to always know where the other was. And, quote, so, I can find you anywhere, and quote, Marcus had said, kissing my forehead, and quote, so, you and #39 never lost to me, and quote, the blue dot pulsed steadily on my screen. The Grandeur Hotel, downtown, room 2847. My hands went numb. The wine glass I and #39 been holding slipped, red liquid spreading across our white marble countertop like blood. Marcus had told me he was working late at the office. An important client presentation that could and #39 wait. He and #39 kissed me goodbye at 6 p.m., straightened his tie in our hallway mirror, and promised to be home by 11. The office was 15 minutes north. The Grandeur Hotel was 20 minutes south. I stared at that blue dot, willing it to move, to glitch, to be anywhere but where it was. But it stayed fixed, steady as a heartbeat. Room 2847. My chest tightened. I could and #39 not breathe. The kitchen walls seemed to close in around me. 5 years. We and #39 been married for 5 years. Together for 8. I and #39 given up a partnership track at my law firm to support his startup. I and #39 moved across the country when his company relocated. I and #39 smiled through his mother and #39's passive-aggressive comments about when we and #39 give her grandchildren, and he was in a hotel room. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and pulled up our text thread. His last message, sent an hour ago, and quote, meeting running long. Don and #39 2. Wait up. Love you. And quote, love you. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I blinked them back furiously. No, not yet. I needed to think. I needed to be sure. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the app was wrong. Maybe my phone buzzed. Another notification. This time, a calendar reminder. And quote, 5th anniversary. Dinner. Rosewood Restaurant. 8 p.m. And quote, today. Our anniversary was today. And he was at a hotel. The pain that ripped through my chest was physical, visceral. I doubled over the counter, gasping. How could I have been so stupid? The late nights, the new cologne, the way he and #39 started going to the gym at 5 a.m. The password on his phone that he and #39 never had before. And quote, new security protocols at work. And quote, he and #39 said with that easy smile. And quote, you know how paranoid tech companies are. And quote, I and #39 believed him. God, I and #39 believed every word. My phone was still in my hand, the blue dot still pulsing. Room 2847. I could go there. I could drive downtown right now, march into that hotel, and what? Catch them in the act, make a scene, give him the chance to lie, to gaslight, to tell me I was crazy? No. A cold clarity settled over me, freezing the tears, hardening something deep in my chest. If Marcus wanted to play games, I and #39 D play. But I and #39 D play to win. I opened my contacts, scrolling past friends, past co-workers, past my own mother, and #39's number. I stopped on a name I and #39 saved years ago, back when I thought it was sweet that Marcus wanted me to have his family and #39's numbers. Diane Mitchell, my mother-in-law, the woman who and #39 D raised Marcus, the woman who called him every Sunday morning without fail, the woman who and #39 told me at our wedding, with a smile that didn't and #39 did reach her eyes, and quote, "My son has always been special. I just hope you and #39 special enough for him," and quote, the woman who would absolutely lose her mind if she knew what her precious son was doing. My fingers hovered over her name. This was nuclear. This was scorched earth. Once I sent this message, there was no taking it back. The blue dot pulsed. Room 2847. I typed fast, before I could second-guess myself, and quote, "Hi Diane, sorry to bother you so late. I and #39 am worried about Marcus. His smartwatch shows he and #39's at the Grandeur Hotel downtown, room 2847, but he told me he was at the office. I tried calling, but no answer. Could you try reaching him? I and #39 am probably being paranoid, but with everything going on lately. Anyway, the hotel is at 1247 Riverside Drive. Thank you." And quote, my finger hovered over send. This would destroy everything. Our marriage, his relationship with his mother. Any chance of quietly working through this. But he and #39 already destroyed everything. Hadn't and #39. He? The moment he checked into that hotel room, I hit send. The message showed as delivered immediately. Then 3 dots appeared. She was typing. My heart hammered against my ribs. What had I done? What had I? And quote, "On my way. Don and #39. T worry, sweetheart. I and #39. Lil handle this." And quote, 7 words. That was all it took. I checked the time. 9:53 p.m. Diane lived 30 minutes from downtown in good traffic. On a Thursday night, she could be there in 25. I should have felt guilty. Should have felt something other than this cold, spreading satisfaction. Instead, I poured myself another glass of wine, pulled up the smartwatch app again, and watched that blue dot. Room 2847. Let me tell you how I got here. Let me tell you about the perfect marriage that was actually the perfect lie. 3 years ago, I met Marcus Mitchell at a tech conference in Austin. I was there representing my law firm. He was there pitching his cybersecurity startup to investors. We literally collided at the hotel bar. He turned too fast with his whiskey. I was, and #39, watching where I was going with my phone, and suddenly we were both soaked and laughing. And quote, I and #39 am Marcus, and quote, he said, dabbing at my blazer with cocktail napkins, and quote, and I and #39 am incredibly sorry and apparently very clumsy, and quote, I and #39 am Natalie, and quote, I said, and quote, and I and #39 am apparently too attached to my email to watch where I and #39 am walking, and quote, he bought me a new drink. We talked until the bar closed. He walked me to my room, and didn't, and #39 tried to kiss me, just asked if he could take me to breakfast. We had breakfast. Then, lunch. Then he changed his flight to stay an extra day. Then I changed mine. 2 months later, he moved to Seattle to be with me. 6 months after that, he proposed on the rooftop of the building where we and #39 had our first date in the city. The ring was perfect, simple solitaire. Exactly what I would have chosen. And quote, I don't and #39 to want to waste another day not being your husband. And quote, he and #39 said, down on one knee with the sunset turning the sky pink behind him. And quote, marry me, Nat. Let me spend the rest of my life making you happy. And quote, I said yes without hesitation. The wedding was everything I and #39 dreamed of. Small, intimate, just our families and closest friends at a winery in Napa. Marcus cried when I walked down the aisle. His vows talked about partnership, about building a life together, about always choosing each other first. And quote, you and #39 my home. And quote, he said, voice breaking. And quote, wherever you are, that and #39 where I belong. And quote, I believed him completely. The first year of marriage was blissful. We were that couple, the one that made our friends simultaneously happy for us and slightly nauseous. We cooked together every Sunday. We had inside jokes. We sent each other random and quote, thinking of you and quote, texts. During the workday, we made love frequently and fell asleep tangled together every night. His startup was growing fast, and I was on track for partner at my firm. We talked about buying a house, about starting a family someday, about growing old together, and quote, I can and #39 to'd wait to be old and grey with you, and quote, Marcus said one night, tracing patterns on my bare shoulder, and quote, we and #39 will be those obnoxious people holding hands in the grocery store, and quote, promise, and quote, I asked, and quote, promise, and quote, he said, and kissed me. His mother, Diane, was complicated. She was perfectly polite to me, always gracious when we visited, but there was something underneath, a coldness in her eyes when she looked at me, a way she had of making even compliments sound like criticisms, and quote, that dress is lovely, Natalie. So brave of you to wear such a bold color. And quote, your career sounds demanding. I just hope Marcus does and #39 feel neglected. And quote, I and #39 sure you and #39 be a wonderful mother someday, when you and #39 ready to prioritize family, of course, and quote, Marcus always brushed it off. And quote, that and #39 just how she is, and quote, he and #39 say, and quote, she and #39 protective. You and #39 will understand when we have kids. And quote, I tried to understand. I tried to build a relationship with her. I called her every week. I bought thoughtful gifts for her birthday and Christmas. I invited her to ladies and #39 lunches. Trying to connect. She was always pleasant, always correct, and always, somehow, making me feel like I was auditioning for a role I and #39 already failed to get. But Marcus loved me, and that was enough. Or so I thought. The cracks started showing about 6 months ago, though I didn't and #39 not recognize them as cracks at the time. Marcus started working later. And quote, we and #3nin, in a crucial growth phase. And quote, he explained. And quote, I need to be there, showing the team I and #3nin am committed. And quote, I understood. I and #3nin pulled plenty of late nights at the firm. I told him I was proud of his dedication. Then came the business trips. Suddenly, he was flying to San Francisco every other week, to Austin, to New York. Always last minute, always crucial. And quote, the investors want FaceTime. And quote, he said, packing his bag at 6 a.m. for a flight that afternoon. And quote, I hate leaving you, but this is what we need to do to get to the next level. And quote, I kissed him goodbye and told him I understood. The gym membership appeared next. And quote, I and #3nin am getting soft. And quote, he said, patting his completely flat stomach. And quote, need to take better care of myself. And quote, he started going at 5 a.m. before I was even awake. Coming home, showered and energized, smelling like expensive soap. And quote, you look great. And quote, I told him, and I meant it. He did look great, fitter, more confident, more like someone who was trying to impress someone. But I pushed that thought away. I was being paranoid, insecure. Marcus loved me. Then, 2 months ago, something happened that should have been my wake-up call. It was a Saturday morning. Marcus was in the shower, and his phone kept buzzing on the nightstand. I glanced at it just to see if it was work, if he needed to answer, and saw a text preview from a number with no name attached. And quote, last night was incredible. Can and #3nin to stop thinking about you. And quote, my stomach dropped. I grabbed the phone, but it was locked. The new password, he and #3nin, added. When he came out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, I was sitting on the bed with his phone in my hand. And quote, whose number is this? And quote, I asked, voice shaking. He didn't, and #3nin even blink. He smiled, that easy, charming smile, and took the phone gently from my hands. And quote, that, and #3nin weird. And quote, he said, unlocking it, and scrolling. And quote, oh, it, and #3nin Connor from the sales team. We closed a huge deal last night. He, and #3nin probably still drunk. And quote, he showed me the phone. The message thread was mundane work stuff, celebratory texts, about a contract. And quote, see, and quote, Marcus said, sitting beside me. And quote, nothing to worry about, babe. Why would I need anyone else when I have you? And quote, he kissed me, and I let myself believe him. But I never saw that initial text again. The one about, and, quote, last night was incredible. And, quote, it had vanished. Looking back now, I realize he must have deleted it the second he picked up the phone. Must have had a burner thread ready to show me. Must have planned for exactly this scenario. He and #3nin played me perfectly. Before I continue, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment telling me where you and #3nin re-watching from. I love hearing from you. And if this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. The doubts didn't and #3nin go away after that Saturday morning. They burrowed deep, like splinters. I could and #3nin quite reach. I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Marcus and #3nin phone was always face down now. Always within reach. He took it into the bathroom when he showered, kept it in his pocket even at home. His schedule became erratic. Some nights he and #3nin da'd come home at 7, cheerful and attentive. Other nights, increasingly frequent nights, he and #3nin D stumble in after midnight, claiming client dinners or emergency meetings, and quote, "Why Don and #3nin to you just quit," and quote, Diane said during one of our weekly phone calls, and quote, "You and #3nin have been working so hard, Natalie. Maybe it and #3nin is time to focus on giving Marcus the support he needs at home," and quote. It was her usual passive-aggressive nonsense, but something in her tone made me pause. There was an edge there, almost like she was trying to tell me something, and quote, "Marcus seems to be managing just fine," and quote, I said carefully, and quote, "Oh, I and #3nin am sure he is," and quote, Diane replied, and quote, "My son has always been very good at managing things," and quote. The way she said it sent a chill down my spine, but when I tried to bring it up with Marcus, he was all concern and attention, and quote, "Are you okay, Nat? You seem stressed lately," and quote, "I and #3nin am fine. I feel like we don't and #3nin see each other anymore," and quote, "I know, baby, I know," and quote, he pulled me into his arms, and quote, "This growth phase, 1 and #3nin last forever, and when we and #3nin through it, I and #3nin am taking you on the vacation of a lifetime. Bora Bora, 2 weeks. No phone, no laptop, just us," and quote. He was so warm, so solid, so familiar. I wanted to believe him so badly, and quote, "Promise," and quote, I whispered, and quote, "Promise," and quote, he said, and kissed the top of my head. 2 weeks later, I found the credit card statement. It was my fault, really. I was looking for our home insurance paperwork in Marcus and #3nin's office, and the statement was sitting on his desk. Not hidden, just there. The Grandeur Hotel. $487. 3 weeks ago, my hands went cold. We and #3nin stayed at the Grandeur. We and #3nin been home that weekend. I remembered, because we and #3nin had his colleague and #3nin wedding on Saturday, and had spent Sunday recovering from hangovers. I sat down at his desk, staring at the charge. There had to be an explanation, maybe a business meeting, but $487 was too much for just a meeting room. That was an overnight rate. My heart was hammering. I should have stopped there, should have asked him about it, but something made me keep digging. I logged into our joint credit card account, the one he thought I never checked because he, and quote, handled the finances, and quote. The password was easy to guess. Our wedding date. The charges appeared in neat rows, and once I started looking, once I started really seeing, the pattern was undeniable. The Grandeur Hotel. Once a month, for the past 4 months. Always midweek. Always $487. Various restaurants I and #3nin never been to. Always 2 entrees. Always expensive wine. Always when he and #3nin told me he was working late. A jewelry store. $3,200. 2 months ago, I and #3nin never received any jewelry. My vision blurred. I could, and #3nin, to breathe. This was real. This was actually happening. Marcus was having an affair. The evidence was right there, printed in black and white. Thousands of dollars of lies. I should have confronted him then, should have thrown the statement in his face and demanded the truth. But something stopped me. Some instinct told me that if I played this wrong, he and #3neen D have an answer for everything. He and #3neen D make me doubt what I was seeing with my own eyes. He was good at that. So instead, I took photos of every charge. I documented everything. And then I put the statement back exactly where I and #3neen found it. And I waited. For what I was and #3neen to sure. For proof I could and #3neen to deny. For him to slip up in some way I could and #3neen to rationalize away. The answer came 2 days later, in the form of my best friend Jess showing up at my office, with a bottle of wine and a grim expression. And quote, "We need to talk," and quote, she said, closing the door behind her. My stomach sank. And quote, "What and #3neen wrong?" And quote, she opened her laptop and pulled up Instagram, a private account I didn't, and #3neen recognize, with only a handful of posts. But the most recent one made the room spin. It was a photo taken at a restaurant, one of the restaurants from the credit card charges. In the background, slightly blurry but unmistakable, was Marcus, and across from him, leaning close, laughing, was a woman. She was beautiful, younger than me, long dark hair, perfect skin, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. And quote, "Who is she?" And quote, my voice didn't, and #3neen sound like mine. And quote, that and #3neen what took me so long to find out. And quote, Jess said quietly. And quote, Nat, that and #3neen Sophia Hartwell. And quote, the name meant nothing to me. And quote, who? And quote, Diane and #3neen goddaughter. And quote, the floor dropped out from under me. Diane and #3neen goddaughter. A woman his mother knew. A woman his mother must have known he was seeing. And quote, there in #3neen more. And quote, Jess said, and she sounded like she was about to cry. And quote, Sophia Hartwell is married to Richard Hartwell, as in Hartwell Tech, Marcus and #3neen biggest investor. And quote, I couldn't #3neen and process it. Couldn't #3neen make sense of what she was saying. And quote, Marcus is having an affair with his investor and #3neen wife, who his mother knows. And quote, Nat. And quote, Jess grabbed my hands. And quote, I think Diane might have introduced them. And quote, the world tilted sideways. All those comments from Diane, all those passive-aggressive digs about my career, about prioritizing family, all those times she and #3neen made me feel like I was, and #3neen good enough. She had and #3neen done been trying to make me a better wife. She and #3neen done been trying to push me out, so Marcus could be with Sophia. I didn't, and #3neen to go home that night. I could, and #3neen to Jess took me to her apartment, poured me wine. I didn't, and #3neen to Jess drink, and held me while I cried until I had no tears left. Then, when the tears stopped, something else took their place. Something cold and hard and absolutely furious. And quote, I need to know everything. And quote, I said, my voice steady. And quote, I need to know exactly what I and hash 3 neen M dealing with. And quote. Jess nodded. And quote. I know a private investigator. He and hash 39 S expensive, but he and hash 39 S discreet. And quote. And quote. I don and hash 3 neen T care what it costs. And quote. The investigator and hash 39 S name was Tom Chen, and he met me the next day at a coffee shop far from my office. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and an efficient manner, and, quote, tell me what you know, and, quote, he said, pulling out a tablet. I told him everything. The hotel charges, the credit card statements, the photo of Marcus with Sophia, the connection to Diane. Tom took notes, his expression never changing. When I finished, he looked up, and quote, Mrs. Mitchell, I and hash 3 neen am going to be direct with you. If what you and hash 3 neen retelling me is true, this is and hash 3 neen T just an affair. This is premeditated, planned, and if his mother is involved, and quote, he paused, and quote, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that this goes deeper than you think, and quote, what do you mean, and quote, men, Don, and hash 3 neen D usually involve their mothers in affairs unless they're in hash 3 neen S, a reason, a benefit. I need to look into both their finances, yours too, because my gut tells me this isn't and hash 3 neen T just about sex, and quote, my blood ran cold, and quote, you think he and hash 39 WS stealing from me, and quote, I think we need to find out, and quote, I hired him on the spot. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. During the day, I was the perfect wife smiling when Marcus came home, asking about his day, letting him kiss me goodnight. During the night, after he fell asleep, I and hash 3 neen D slip out of bed and send Tom everything I could find. Bank statements, investment accounts, tax returns, every password I could access. Tom worked fast. Within a week, he sent me his first report. I read it in my office with my door locked, and with every paragraph, my hands shook harder. The affair with Sophia had been going on for over a year. Tom had photos, dozens of them, Marcus and Sophia at restaurants, walking hand in hand through parks, entering the Grandeur Hotel together, over and over again. But that was an hash 3 neen even the worst part. The worst part was in the financial section. Marcus had been systematically moving money out of our joint accounts, not huge amounts that would trigger alerts, just small transfers, $500 here, $1,000 there, always to an account I and hash 39 D never seen before. Over the past year, he and hash 3 neen had moved almost $75,000. My money. From bonuses I and hash 3 neen D earned. From my salary that got deposited into our joint account, money I and hash 3 neen D assumed was going toward our future, our house savings, our someday family fund. He and hash 39 had stolen it. But why? What was he doing with it? Tom and hash 39 S next report answered that question. Marcus and Sophia weren't and hash 3 neen didn't just having an affair. They were planning a future together. They and hash 3 neen D looked at apartments in San Francisco, expensive ones, way beyond what Marcus could afford on his startup salary. They and hash 3 neen D opened a joint bank account. That and hash 3 neen is where my money was going. and the timeline Tom had constructed showed they were planning to make their move soon. Within weeks, Marcus was going to leave me. He was going to take my money, move to San Francisco with his investor and #39's wife, and probably file for divorce, claiming I and #39D been, and quote, unsupportive, and quote, of his career. I and #39D be left with nothing while he started his perfect new life, and quote, there and #39's one more thing, and quote, Tom said when he called to discuss the report, and quote, I need to talk to you about Diane Mitchell, and quote, my heart sank, and quote, what about her, and quote, she and #39's been financially supporting this. Your mother-in-law has transferred over $50,000 to X of 5, Marcus, in the past year. She and #39's paid for dinners, for hotel rooms, for gifts for Sophia. She and #39's not just aware of the affair. Mrs. Mitchell, she and #39's bankrolling it, and quote, I dropped my phone. Diane had been helping him, encouraging him, funding his betrayal while calling me every week to ask how I was doing, to make passive-aggressive comments about my career, to remind me that family should come first. She and #39 had been sabotaging me from the inside. If this story is making your blood boil like mine was, make sure you and #39 resubscribed and hit that notification bell so you don't and #39 miss what happens next. Trust me, the revenge gets so much better. Your support means everything to this channel. Armed with Tom and #39's reports, I started digging deeper into Sophia Hartwell and #39's life. If this was going to be war, I needed to know my enemy. Sophia, it turned out, came from old money. Her father had been a tech entrepreneur who and #39D sold his company for hundreds of millions before dying of a heart attack when Sophia was 25. She and #39D inherited a fortune. Richard Hartwell, her husband, was different. He was self-made, brilliant, and according to the society pages I found online, completely devoted to his wife. They and #39D met at a charity gala, married within a year, and seemed picture perfect. Richard and #39's company, Hartwell Tech, had invested heavily in Marcus and #39's startup. He was Marcus and #39's biggest backer, the one Marcus always talked about with reverence, and quote, Richard believes in me, and quote, Marcus had said more than once, and quote, he sees the vision, and quote, what Richard didn't and #39 apparently was that Marcus was sleeping with his wife and planning to run off with her money. I had Tom dig into Sophia and #39's finances next. What he found made everything click into place. Sophia and #39's inheritance was held in a trust that matured when she turned 35, which was happening in 2 months. On her birthday, she and #39D have full access to $180 million. $180 million. Marcus was and #39 just having an affair. He was and #39 just planning to leave me. He was positioning himself to access Sophia and #39's fortune. The startup, the networking, the charm offensive. With Richard Hartwell, it had all been a setup. And my money, the $75,000 he and #39D stolen, was probably being used to wine and dine Sophia, too. make himself seem successful and worthy of her. I and #39, I'd been funding my own betrayal. The rage that filled me was unlike anything I and #39 D ever felt. It was cold, focused, absolute. These people had played me for a fool. They and #39 D taken my love, my trust, my money, and laughed while doing it. But they and #39 dumb made one critical mistake. They and #39 dumb underestimated me. I called Tom and quote, I need more than photos and bank records. I need audio. I need them on tape, planning this. And quote, that and #39 risky, and quote, Tom warned, and quote, if we get caught, and quote, we won, and #39 get caught, because they think I and #39 am stupid. They think I and #39 am so in love, so trusting, that I and #39 I'll never figure it out. That and #39 our advantage, and quote, there was a pause. Then, and quote, what did you have in mind? And quote, I told him. It was bold, maybe illegal, definitely risky, but I didn't, and #39 took care. Tom placed a recording device in Marcus and #39's car, a tiny thing that looked like a phone charger. He placed another in the home office, hidden in a picture frame I and #39 given Marcus for our anniversary. For a week, we recorded everything, and what we heard was worse than I could have imagined. The first damning conversation came 3 days in. Marcus was in his car, on the phone with Sophia, and quote, she does, and #39, and quote, he set his voice casual, amused, and quote, Natalie, and #39 is completely clueless. She actually believed that Connor text cover story, and quote, Sophia and #39's laugh came through the speaker, and quote, your mother was right, she, and #39's not very bright, is she, and quote, she has her uses, and quote, Marcus replied, and quote, her salary has been helpful while we get everything in place. But once your trust matures, we won, and #39 need her anymore, and quote, have you talked to the lawyer about the divorce strategy, and quote, yeah, we and #39 re going to claim she and #39 been having an affair, make her look like the bad guy. That way I can fight for more in the settlement, maybe even get alimony since she makes more than me, and quote, they both laughed. I listened to the recording in Tom and #39's office, my face frozen, my hands clenched so tight my nails drew blood, and quote, there, and #39's more, and quote, Tom said quietly, and played another clip. This one was from the home office, Marcus and Diane on speakerphone, and quote, she hasn't, and #39 to notice the missing money, and quote, Diane asked, and quote, nope, like I said, Mom, she and #39's not paying attention, she and #39's too busy trying to make partner, and quote, good, has Sophia agreed to the San Francisco timeline, and quote, yeah, we and #39 removing the week after her trust matures. I and #39 will file for divorce the day before we leave. By the time Natalie figures out what and #39's happening, we and #39'll be gone, and quote, and Richard, and quote, Sophia and #39 E's going to tell him she wants a divorce. A few days before. Clean break. He and hash 39. LB. Devastated. But he and hash 39. I'll pay to make it go away quietly. He hates scandal. And quote. And quote. Perfect. And quote. Diane sounded pleased. And quote. This worked out better than I hoped. Sophia is a much better match for you than Natalie ever was. And quote. And quote. You were right, Mom. I should have listened to you from the start. Tend. And quote. The recording ended. I sat in Tom and hash 39's office, feeling nothing, completely hollow. Diane, Haddon, and hash 39. Just known. She and hash 39. Planned this. She and hash 39. Introduced Marcus to Sophia. She and hash 39. Encouraged the affair. She and hash 39. Helped him steal from me. And all the while, she and hash 39. Called me weakly, pretending to care, pretending to be family. And quote. Mrs. Mitchell? And quote. Tom said carefully. And quote. Are you okay? And quote. I looked up at him. And quote. No. And quote. I said. And quote. But I and hash 39 am going to be. Because I and hash 39 am going to destroy them. And quote. That night, I went home and played the perfect wife one last time. I kissed Marcus hello. I asked about his day. I smiled when he told me about a and quote breakthrough and quote with investors and quote Richard and hash 39 is increasing his stake and quote Marcus said enthusiastically and quote this is huge, Nat. This changes everything and quote that and hash 39 wonderful and quote I said, pouring him wine and quote I and hash 39 am so proud of you and quote he beamed at me, actually beamed, like he was and hash 39 planning to divorce me in 2 weeks, like he had and hash 39 that spent the last year systematically destroying my life. After he fell asleep, I went into the bathroom and cried silently into a towel. Not from sadness anymore, from rage, from the sheer injustice of it all. But I was done crying. I had work to do. I met with Tom the next morning at 6 a.m., before Marcus was even awake, and quote, I need you to track his every move today, and quote, I said, and quote, I need to know exactly where he is, at all times, and quote, what are you planning, and quote, I, and hash 39, I, going to give them exactly what they want. They want to leave me blindsided. They want to paint me as the oblivious wife. Fine. Let them think they, and hash 39, V1, and quote. Tom raised an eyebrow, and quote, and then, and quote, and then I, and hash 39, am going to blow up their entire world, but on my terms. When I, and hash 39, am ready, and quote, I went home and found Marcus in the kitchen, making coffee, and quote, hey, and quote, he said, kissing my cheek, and quote, you and hash 39, re-up early, and quote, couldn't and hash 39, sleep, I was thinking, and quote, I took a breath, like I was nervous, and quote, maybe we should have dinner with your mom this week. I feel like I haven't, and hash 39, seen her in forever, and quote, Marcus and hash 39, face lit up, and quote, that and hash 39, a great idea, babe. She and hash 39, love that. I and hash 39, will call her today. Perfect. That night, I had dinner with Jess. I told her everything, the recordings, the plan, the sheer scope of the betrayal, and quote, Jesus Christ, and quote, Jess whispered, and quote, his own mother, and quote, his own mother, and quote, I confirmed, and quote, they played me together. They planned this together. So I, and #39, am going to take them down together, and quote, what do you need from me? And quote, a good divorce attorney, the best you know, and quote, she pulled out her phone, and quote, I know someone, she, and #39, a shark, expensive, but worth it, and quote, I don't, and #39, care about expensive. I want ruthless, and quote, the attorney was named Patricia Simmons, and she was exactly what I needed. 50s, impeccably dressed, with eyes that missed nothing. I laid out everything in her office. The recordings, the bank transfers, the affair, Diane, and #39's involvement. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, and quote, Mrs. Mitchell, do you want this marriage to survive? And quote, no, and quote, do you want to destroy him? And quote, yes, and quote, she smiled. It was and #39, to nice smile, and quote, then let and #39's get to work, and quote, Patricia and #39's strategy was simple. Let them make their move first. Let Marcus file for divorce. Let him and Sophia think they and #39 gotten away with it. Then we and #39 strike with everything we had, and quote, we need them confident, and quote, Patricia explained, and quote, overconfident, because confident people make mistakes, and when they do, we and #39 will be ready, and quote, but I had one more card to play, one more piece of revenge that was all mine, the smartwatch. Marcus still didn't, and #39 to know I was tracking him, still thought his location sharing was just a sweet vestige of our honeymoon period that he was too busy to turn off. He thought wrong. For the next week, I watched. I documented. Every time that blue dot moved to the Grandeur Hotel, I took screenshots. Every time he told me he was at the office, while the dot showed him at a restaurant with Sophia, I saved it. I was building a case, a timeline, irrefutable proof. And then, on a Thursday night, our 5th anniversary, though Marcus had clearly forgotten his dot, moved to the Grandeur Hotel once again, room 2847. I stared at my phone, at that blue dot, and I knew this was it. This was the moment. I could go to the hotel myself, catch them in the act, but that would give Marcus time to spin the story, to lie, to manipulate. No, I needed someone else there, someone who would be so outraged, so hurt, so completely betrayed that they and #39 burn Marcus and #39 his entire world down, and I knew exactly who that someone was. I pulled up Diane and #39's contact, the woman who and #39 helped orchestrate this, who and #39 called me every week while funding my husband and #39's affair, who and #39 smiled to my face while destroying my marriage. She and #39 played the concerned mother-in-law so well. Let and #39 see how she played angry wife of a cheater, because I was about to teach Diane Mitchell a lesson she and #39 never forget. When you help someone cheat, you and #39 an accomplice to every lie they tell, and every lie eventually comes to light. My fingers flew over the keyboard. And quote, "Hi Diane. Sorry to bother you so late. I, and #3neen, am worried about Marcus. His smartwatch shows he and #3neen s at the Grandeur Hotel downtown, room 2847, but he told me he was at the office. I tried calling, but no answer. Could you try reaching him? I, and #3neen, am probably being paranoid, but with everything going on lately. Anyway, the hotel is at 1247 Riverside Drive. Thank you." And quote, I hit send, and then I poured myself a glass of wine, pulled up the smartwatch tracking app, and waited for the show to begin. Diane and #3neen's response came within 2 minutes, and quote, "On my way, Dawn and #3neen. Don't worry, sweetheart. I and #3neen will handle this," and quote. I almost laughed. She thought she was going to handle this. She thought she was going to swoop in, cover for Marcus, maybe text me some excuse about how he was actually in a legitimate meeting and his phone died. She had no idea what was about to happen. But I was and #3neen done yet, because while Diane thought she was protecting her son, I was about to introduce a few more players to this drama. I pulled up my contacts and found the number I and #3neen saved weeks ago when Tom had first started investigating. Richard Hartwell and #3neen's personal cell phone. Richard, the devoted husband who thought his wife was at her book club tonight. Richard, the brilliant investor who and #3neen put millions into Marcus and #3neen's startup. Richard, who had no idea his wife was planning to leave him in 2 weeks with half his assets. My hands were steady as I typed. And quote, "Mr. Hartwell, you Dawn and #3neen to know me, but my name is Natalie Mitchell. I and #3neen am Marcus Mitchell and #3neen's wife. I and #3neen am very sorry to bother you, but I think you should know that your wife Sophia is at the Grandeur Hotel downtown right now, room 2847, with my husband. I and #3neen been tracking his location. I thought you deserved to know before I confronted them. Room 2847. The hotel is at 1247 Riverside Drive." And quote, "Send." 3 dots appeared almost immediately. And quote, "On my way. Thank you." And quote, 2 words, but I could feel the fury behind them. Now for the final touch. I called Tom. And quote, "Are you still at your office?" And quote, "Yeah, finishing up paperwork." What and #3neen's going on? And quote, "Marcus is at the Grandeur Hotel, room 2847, with Sophia. His mother is on her way there, thinking she and #3neen is going to help cover for him. And Richard Hartwell is on his way, having just found out his wife is there." And quote, there was a pause. Then Tom started laughing. And quote, "Oh my God, you and #3neen brilliant." And quote, "I need you there. I need video of everything that happens. Can you do it?" And quote, "I and #3neen am 10 minutes away. I and #3neen I'll set up in the lobby and hallway. This is going to be good." And quote, "Tom, make sure you get everything. Every word, every reaction. I want all of it." And quote, "You got it." And quote, I hung up and checked the time. 9:55 p.m. Diane would arrive. First, She lived closest. Richard was coming from his estate in the suburbs, probably 25 minutes away. That meant Diane would have about 10 minutes alone with Marcus and Sophia before Richard arrived. 10 minutes for her to realize I was an #3nine, to the naive fool she thought I was. I pulled up the tracker app again. The blue dot was still steady in room 2847. Then I called Jess and quote, "It and #3nine, S happening," and quote, I said when she answered, and quote, "Right now," and quote, "Oh my God, do you want me to come over?" and quote, "No. I want you to be ready to bail me out of jail if this goes sideways," and quote, "Natalie," and quote, "I and #3nine, kidding, mostly," and quote, I took a sip of wine, and quote, Jess, they, and #3nine, all going to be there. Diane, Richard, probably hotel security, and Tom and #3nine, recording everything. By tomorrow morning, Marcus and #3nine, life is going to be over, and quote, "Good," and quote, Jess said fiercely, and quote, "He deserves it. They all deserve it," and quote, "Yeah," and quote, I said softly, and quote, "They do," and quote, we stayed on the phone together, neither of us speaking, just being there. I watched the clock, watched the blue dot, waited. At 10:14 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Tom, and quote, "Diane just entered the building. She looks furious. I and #3nine, in position," and quote, my heart started racing. It was happening. I pulled up the hotel and #3nine's website and found their main number. When the front desk answered, I kept my voice calm and professional, and quote, "Hi, I need to report a disturbance in room 2847. There, and #3nine, a married man with his girlfriend, and his wife just arrived to confront them. I think hotel security should probably be prepared for an incident," and quote, "Oh my goodness. Yes, thank you for letting us know. We and #3nine, we send security up right away," and quote, "Perfect." Another text from Tom, and quote, "Diane and #3nine, in the elevator. She used her credit card to get a room key. From the desk, told them it was for her son. Richard Hartwell just walked in. He looks like he and #3nine, ready to murder someone," and quote, I closed my eyes and pictured it. Diane, walking down that hallway, thinking she and #3nine, about to help Marcus cover his tracks. Richard, right behind her, knowing exactly what he and #3nine, about to find. And Marcus and Sophia in that room, having no idea that their perfect plan was about to doubly detonate in their faces. My phone buzzed again. This time, a video from Tom. I hit play. The video opened on the hallway outside room 2847. Tom must have been hidden behind a corner or in a maintenance alcove, because the angle captured the entire doorway. Diane appeared first, walking fast, her heels clicking on the carpet. She was put together as always designer suit, perfect hair, but her face was rigid with anger. She stopped at 2847 and knocked hard, and quote, Marcus, I need to talk to you right now," and quote, no answer. She knocked again, louder, and quote, "Marcus Alexander Mitchell, open this door," and quote, I heard her mutter something, then watched as she pulled out a key card she must have used, the one from the front desk, and swiped it. The door opened. For a moment, there was silence. Then Diane and #3nine,'s voice, ice cold, and quote, "Get dressed, both of you," and quote, I heard scrambling. Sophia and #3nine,'s voice, high and panicked, and quote, "Diane, I can explain," and quote, "Explain," and quote, Diane and #3nine,'s laugh was sharp, and quote, "Explain what? That you and #3nine have been screwing my son? That you and #3nine have been planning to run off together with your trust fund?" "Yes, Sophia, I know all about the plan. I helped make the plan," and quote, my breath caught, even though I knew she was involved. Hearing her say it so boldly was something else. Marcus and #3nine,'s voice next, confused, and quote, "Mom, what are you doing here?" and quote, "Natalie sent me, your wife," and quote, Diane and #3nine,'s voice was venomous, and quote, "She and #3nine,'s been tracking your location, you idiot. She knows you, and #3nine, here. She asked me to check on you, because she was," and #3nine, worried, and #3nine, and quote, silence. Then Marcus, quiet, and quote, "She knows," and quote, "Of course she knows," and quote, Diane snapped, and quote, "She and #3nine is probably been playing dumb while gathering evidence. Do you understand what this means? She has proof. She could ruin everything," and quote, "I and #3nine, I'll handle her," and quote, Marcus said, and quote, "I and #3nine, I'll tell her I came here to break things off with Sophia, that it was a mistake. She and #3nine will believe me," and quote, "Are you insane? She sent your mother to catch you in the act. She and #3nine,'s not that stupid," and quote, from the hallway, Tom and #3nine,'s camera suddenly shifted. Richard Hartwell had appeared, walking toward room 2847 with the slow, deliberate pace of a man barely holding onto his control. He didn't, and #3nine, to knock. He pushed the door open Diane had, and #3nine, to fully closed it, and walked in. The video didn't, and #3nine, to catch the inside of the room, but I could hear everything, and quote, Richard, and quote, Sophia, and #3nine,'s voice was terrified, and quote, "Richard, please, I can explain," and quote, the sound that came next was sharp and loud, a slap, and quote, "You disgust me," and quote, Richard said, his voice shaking, and quote, "Both of you, in our bed? No, wait, in a hotel room, like common prostitutes," and quote, "Mr. Hartwell," and quote, Marcus started, and quote, "This isn't an #3nine, what it," and quote, "Shut your mouth," and quote, Richard and #3nine, his voice dropped to something dangerous, and quote, "You and #3nine, we been sleeping with my wife, stealing from me, planning to run off with her money. Yes, I know about that too. I and #3nine, not an idiot," and quote, "How," and quote, Marcus sounded shocked, and quote, "How do I know? Because your wife told me. Natalie, the woman you and #3nine, we been stealing from and gaslighting. She sent me here to see this for myself," and quote, the silence that followed was deafening, and quote, "That bitch," and quote, Diane hissed, and quote, "She set us up," and quote, "No," and quote, Richard corrected coldly, and quote, "You set yourselves up. She just lit the fuse," and quote, The video showed hotel security appearing next to men in uniform, looking wary, and quote, "Excuse me, we and #3 we received a complaint about a disturbance," and quote. Richard stepped into the hallway, adjusting his jacket. His face was pale, but composed, and quote, "Yes, my wife is in that room, with her lover. I and #3 D like her removed from the premises, immediately. And I and #3 D like documentation, that she was here, with him, for legal purposes," and quote. The security guards looked at each other, then at Richard, clearly recognizing him, and quote, "Of course, Mr. Hartwell. Right away," and quote. The video continued for another 10 minutes, Sophia crying, Diane trying to take control of the situation, Marcus attempting to explain to security that this was all a misunderstanding, Richard standing stone-faced in the hallway, making phone calls to what sounded like his lawyers. Other hotel guests appeared, phones out, filming. The scandal was spreading in real time. Tom and #3's camera captured Marcus, finally emerging from the room, trying to slip away. He made it 3 steps before Richard blocked his path, and quote, "Where do you think you and #3 going?" and quote. Richard asked quietly, and quote, "I need to go home. I need to talk to my wife," and quote, "Your wife who just destroyed your life," and quote. Richard smiled, but it was terrifying, and quote, "Oh, by all means, go talk to her. I and #3 am sure she has a lot to say to you," and quote. Richard, please, and quote, "You and #3 redone, Marcus. My company is pulling out of your startup. I and #3 I'll make sure every investor in Silicon Valley knows what kind of man you are. You and #3 will never get funded again. Your company is dead," and quote. Marcus and #3's face went white, and quote, "You can, and #3 T and quote, "I can, and I will," and quote. Richard stepped closer, and quote, "You made a mistake, son. You thought you were clever, but you forgot that the woman you married might be clever too," and quote. He walked away. The video ended. I sat in my kitchen, the empty wine glass in my hand, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. They and #3 D underestimated me. All of them. They and #3 D thought I was weak, naive, trusting. They and #3 D'd been wrong. Marcus came home at 2 a.m. I heard his key in the lock, heard him stumble into the house. I was sitting in the living room, lights on, waiting. He stopped when he saw me, and quote, "Natalie," and quote, "Don and #3 T," and quote. I said quietly, and quote, "Don and #3 T say my name, Don and #3 T, try to explain, just Don and #3 T," and quote. He sank onto the couch opposite me, his head in his hands. He looked destroyed, suit wrinkled, hair messy, eyes red, and quote, "How long have you known?" and quote. He asked finally, and quote, "Long enough. How long has it been going on?" and quote, "Natalie," and quote, "How long?" and quote. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, and quote, 14 months, and quote, 14 months, more than a year, our entire 4th anniversary. He and #3 and been with her, and quote, "And your mother?" and quote. He flinched, and quote, She introduced us. She thought Sophia would be a better fit for my career," and quote. and quote, a better fit, and quote, I repeated numbly, and quote, because she, and hash 39, s, rich, and quote, he didn't, and hash 39, to, deny it, and quote, and my money, the $75,000 you stole from our accounts, and quote, his head shot up, and quote, how do you, and quote, I know everything, Marcus. The offshore account, the San Francisco apartment, the divorce, strategy where you were going to claim I cheated, your mother funding your affair, Sophia and hash 39, S, trust fund, all of it. And, quote, he stared at me like he and hash 39, D never seen me before, and quote, I, and hash 39, have been documenting everything, and quote, I continued, and quote, I have recordings of you and Sophia planning your future. I have bank records. I have photos. I have enough evidence to bury you in civil court and possibly criminal court for theft. And quote, Natalie, please, and quote, you were going to leave me broke and humiliated. You were going to steal from me and make me look like the bad guy. And quote, I stood up, and quote, so now I, and hash 39, am going to do to you what you planned to do to me. But worse. And quote, what are you talking about? And quote, I, and hash 39, am talking about the fact that Richard Hartwell is destroying your company. I, and hash 39, am talking about the fact that every investor in the tech world is going to know by tomorrow that you slept with your biggest backer and hash 39, S, wife. I, and hash 39, am talking about the videos from tonight that are already circulating on social media. And quote, I smiled, and quote, you and hash 39 were ruined, Marcus, and you did it to yourself. And quote, his face crumpled, and quote, I and hash 39 am sorry. I and hash 39 am so sorry. I love you. I just, and quote, no, and quote, my voice was sharp, and quote, you darn, and hash 39, to get to say that. You darn, and hash 39, to get to apologize. This is, and hash 39, TA, mistake, Marcus. This is who you are, a liar, a thief, a cheater, and I am done, and quote, where do I go? And quote, I don, and hash 39. Did care, go to your mother and hash 39. S, go to Sophia and hash 39. S, oh wait, her husband kicked her out too. Go to a hotel, go to hell. I genuinely don, and hash 39, did care, and quote, he stood slowly, looking around our home, like he was seeing it for the first time, or the last time, and quote, you and hash 39, we're going to take everything, on, and hash 39, to you, and quote, he asked quietly, and quote, everything I can. You stole from me, lied to me, destroyed our marriage. So yes, Marcus, I, and hash 39, am going to take everything, and quote, he walked to the door, then paused, and quote, I really did love you, at the beginning, and quote, get out of my house, and quote, he left. I stood there in the silent living room, alone in the home we and hash 39, D built together, and felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just exhaustion. It was done. The divorce proceedings moved faster than I expected. With the evidence I had, recordings, the bank transfers, the proof of his affair, and theft Marcus and hash 3 S lawyer advised him to settle. The settlement was brutal. I kept the house. I kept all my personal assets and retirement accounts. Marcus had to return every penny he and hash 3 D stolen with interest. He had to pay my legal fees, and because of the theft and his mother and hash 3 S involvement, I convinced the judge to award me additional damages for emotional distress. Total payout, $275,000. Everything he and hash 3 D taken, plus everything he and hash 3 D planned to steal, plus punitive damages. His startup, already hemorrhaging investors after Richard pulled out, declared bankruptcy. Within 2 months, the tech world had indeed blacklisted him. No one wanted to back a man who and hash 3 betrayed his biggest investor that spectacularly. Sophia and hash 3 S divorce from Richard was equally devastating for her. Richard and hash 3 S legal team had been waiting for this apparently. Sophia had a prenup that included an infidelity clause. She got almost nothing, and Richard got full control of her trust fund investments that he and hash 3 D managed. She went from billionaire heiress to broke socialite overnight. But my favorite part of the fallout was Diane. I sued her separately for her role in Marcus and hash 3 S theft, her financial contributions to the affair, her help in planning the divorce strategy. All of it was documented. My attorney, the brilliant Patricia, argued that Diane had been an active accomplice in defrauding me. The judge agreed. Diane had to pay me an additional $100,000 in damages. Her reputation in her social circles was destroyed. The woman who and hash 3 D always been so proud, so proper, was now known as the mother-in-law who helped her son cheat and steal. The last time I saw her was in court. At the final hearing, she looked old, diminished. The perfect veneer was gone. She tried to catch my eye as she left the courtroom, but I didn't, and hash 3 did give her the satisfaction. She didn't, and hash 3 exist to me anymore. None of them did. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I quit my job at the law firm, not because I had to, because I wanted to. With the settlement money, I had options, freedom, and I decided to use it to build something new. I started my own legal consulting firm, specializing in helping other women navigate divorces from unfaithful spouses. Women like me, who, and hash 3 been gaslit and stolen from, and made to feel crazy for trusting their instincts. The firm took off immediately. Apparently, I was, and hash 3 alone in my experience. Apparently, there were a lot of women who needed someone who understood exactly what they were going through. Jess came to work with me, handling the business side while I focused on client strategy. Tom Chen became our lead investigator. Patricia Simmons sent us referrals. We were helping people, making a difference, building something real, and slowly, quietly, I started to heal. I sold the house, Marcus, and I had shared too many memories, too much pain. I bought a loft, downtown, all windows and light, with a view of the city skyline. My space, my fresh start. I reconnected with friends I and hash 3 D neglected during my marriage. I took a pottery class. I went on a solo trip to Italy, something I and hash 3 D always wanted to do, but Marcus had never been interested in. I learned who I was without him, and I liked her. 8 months after the divorce, I ran into Richard Hartwell at a charity gala. I almost didn't, and hash 3 To recognize him, he looked different, lighter somehow, younger. Natalie, he said, smiling genuinely. I was hoping I and #3nine to see you. Richard, how are you? Better, much better. He gestured to the champagne bar. Can I buy you a drink? I owe you one. We found a quiet corner and talked for hours. He told me about his divorce, about rebuilding his company, about the relief of finally knowing the truth about Sophia. I and #3nine am grateful. He said. Truly, you could have let me keep living in ignorance. You deserved the truth. So did you. He looked at me seriously. And you handled it better than anyone I and #3nine we've ever seen. That night at the hotel, the way you orchestrated everything, it was brilliant. Ruthless, but brilliant. I was angry. You were justified. He paused. Would you have dinner with me sometime? Just as friends? I and #3nine like to hear more about your consulting firm. I said yes. Dinner turned into dinners, plural, coffee meetings, long walks through the city. Richard was easy to talk to, understanding in a way only someone who and #3nine had been through the same betrayal could be. 3 months later, he kissed me outside my loft building, tentative and sweet. Too soon? He asked. I thought about it. About Marcus, about the pain, about everything I and #3nine had been through. No. I said. I think it and #3nine is exactly the right time. Marcus sent me an email 6 months ago. Subject line. I and #3nine am sorry. I didn't and #3nine don't read it for 3 days. When I finally did, it was exactly what I expected. Excuses, explanations, regrets. He wrote about how he and #3nine made mistakes, how he and #3nine been confused and overwhelmed, and hadn't and #3nine meant to hurt me, how his mother had pushed him towards Sophia, how he wished he could go back and do things differently. He wrote that he was living in a studio apartment in Sacramento now, working in tech support for a startup, that his mother was and #3nine speaking to him anymore. She blamed him for ruining her reputation, that Sophia had moved to Europe and blocked his number. He wrote that he thought about me every day, about what we and #3nine had, about what he and #3nine thrown away. He ended the email with, I know you and #3nine I'll never forgive me, but I hope someday you can understand that I did love you. I just loved the idea of wealth and success more, and that was my biggest mistake. I read the email twice. Then I replied, Marcus, you and #3nine rewrite I and #3nine will never forgive you. Not because I can and #3nine but because I don't and #3nine need to. Forgiveness is for people who matter, and you stopped mattering to me the day I sent your location to your mother. I don't and #3nine hate you. I don't and #3nine think about you. You and #3nine Read just a chapter in my life that I and hash 39 the closed and moved past. You say you loved me, but loved wealth more. I don and hash 39. T think you and hash 39 v ever loved anyone but yourself. And that and hash 39 s why you and hash 39 re alone in a studio apartment while I and hash 39 am building a life I actually want. I hope you learned something from what happened. I hope you become a better person. But, mostly, I hope you understand that every consequence you and hash 39 refacing is entirely your own fault. You didn't and hash 39 to lose me because I was vindictive. You lost me because you were a coward who chose easy lies over hard truths. And you and hash 39 will keep losing until you figure out that people aren't and hash 39 nutted tools to use for your advancement. Goodbye, Marcus. I wish you a life exactly as honest as you were to me. Natalie. And quote. I hit send and blocked his email address. That was 2 weeks ago. Today, I and hash 39 am sitting in my loft, sunlight streaming through the windows, Richard beside me, working on his laptop while I plan our weekend trip to wine country. My consulting firm is thriving. My life is full. I and hash 39 am happy. And Marcus is somewhere in Sacramento, living with the consequences of his choices. That and hash 39 s not revenge. That and hash 39 s not vindication. That and hash 39 es just karma. And karma, I and hash 39 v learned, always collects its debts. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled things, if I think I went too far that night at the hotel, setting up that massive confrontation. I don and hash 39 t. Marcus and Diane and Sophia made their choices. They lied. They stole. They conspired. They underestimated me. All I did was shine a light on the truth. All I did was refuse to be the victim they wanted me to be. Yes, I orchestrated their downfall, but they built the house of cards themselves. I just provided the wind. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat, because here and hash 39 s what I learned from all of this. You teach people how to treat you, and when you accept lies, when you ignore your instincts, when you let people make you feel crazy for trusting your own eyes, you teach them that you and hash 39 re an easy mark. I and hash 39 am not an easy mark anymore. I and hash 39 am not the woman who believed every excuse, who rationalized away every red flag, who put her husband and hash 39 s needs before her own self-respect. I and hash 39 am the woman who fought back, who demanded justice, who rebuilt her life on her own terms. And that woman, she and hash 39 s unstoppable. So thank you, Marcus. Thank you for being exactly as terrible as you were, because in destroying our marriage, you freed me to become someone so much stronger than I ever was with you. Thank you for showing me what I and hash 39 am capable of when I stop playing nice. Thank you for failing, because your failure was my liberation, and I would and hash 39 to trade that for anything. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story gave you the justice you needed to see, check out the other videos on screen. They and hash 39 read just as satisfying. And if you haven't and hash 39 t subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? See you in the next story.